Hi, in this lesson, we'll be talking about preparing and getting ready to submit requests for your letter of recommendation. The who, the how, and when of recommendation letters are very important, and the three cannot exist without each other. When you're thinking about who you want to ask to write your letter of recommendation, you want to consider people who can speak to the following qualities that you see on the screen. So the who, you will ask for 2 letters of recommendations. Make sure you select 2 people that won't share the same information about you, because you want the college admission staff reading your application to learn about you in a holistic viewpoint. So one person should write from your academic perspective. This could be a teacher or a counselor. Select someone that will speak to your academic curiosity, your classwork ethic, and intellectual progression. And then your second writer should be someone maybe non-academic, perhaps a coach, a community leader, an employer, a youth minister, etc. So this person that can speak to your interests, your leadership skills, and activities outside of the classroom. Remember, the goal is to choose someone that can complement and highlight aspects that they may not see in your transcripts, your test scores, or your personal essay. It's equally important to remember, don't ask someone that may be biased in supporting your admission application, such as a friend or a family member, although they would write you a glowing essay. This would not look favorably by your admission staff reading your essay. So definitely avoid family and friends. As far as timing, you've got to plan ahead. The folks that you're asking to write your letter of recommendation are busy, and they're going to be writing probably about 15 to 20 other letters of recommendation within the same time frame. So it's important for you to set a deadline for yourself for when you're going to make your requests. The template is usually a 2-week window, but the more time you can give them, they will definitely appreciate that. So think of it this way. If we're working towards a November 1st college application submission deadline, you should ask for your letter of recommendation to be completed by October 25th. That means, working backwards, you would need to ask no later than October 11th for them to write you a letter of recommendation. But let's just make it easy. You should ask all the folks that you want to have write a letter of recommendation by September 25th. So you have about a couple weeks now to firm up who you would like to ask. So we started talking about how you do this, the how. So these suggested steps will make asking for a recommendation go more smoothly. So plan ahead. You've been talking about your timeline and creating your timeline and setting those deadlines. It's important to do that. When you're asking, because we are in COVID, we can't make a face-to-face appointment, but certainly send out an email, a well-written, brief request that includes what your goals are and why you're asking them to write you a letter of recommendation. Say where you're applying to and what maybe a sentence on why you're choosing that school. And then include in your ask how you're submitting your application, so that when they look for their letter of recommendation invitation, they know it's either coming from maybe UW system schools or the common application. Again, set your deadline and make that clear with them when you will need your letter from them, or for them to submit it by. So don't wait until November 1st. Give them at least a week before it's actually due. So maybe say October 25th, I need you to have this completed for me by. As the deadline is approaching, if you haven't received a confirmation from them saying, hey, I submitted your letter of recommendation, send a polite reminder and give enough time to do that. And then at the end of this process, remember to send a thank you letter or a card. So how to submit the request? If you are completing your application through the common application process, While you're going through the online form, there will be a section for the teacher or other recommender, and you'll input their information there. That will send an email to your person that you're requesting, and they'll be prompted to follow and how to complete your letter of recommendation. If you're submitting through the UW system application, you will need to send a link that is at the bottom of this, at the end of this. You'll see a link to invite someone to submit a recommendation. It's a link that they will follow and submit clearly through there. So you want to make sure that you include that. They may not, don't leave it up to them to go to the UW website to find it. Make it as easy as possible for them and include that link in your request. Now, there may be situations where it's easier for the person writing a letter of recommendation to simply send it in, and that's allowed, that's fine. Just follow the address that you see here on this slide to make sure it goes to the Office of Admissions and Recruitment, and make sure that the person includes your full name, your date of birth, and your campus ID number. So you will need to give that to them if they are sending it in the mail. If your school official is writing it and they prefer to use the system Naviance, that is accepted by UW, but you may want to check with other schools outside of UW if you're applying to make sure that they would accept it through Naviance. You should find out that information ahead of asking for a letter of recommendation. And the last point, sometimes students already have a glowing letter of recommendation that a teacher or a counselor wrote maybe last year, and that's fine, but please note that if that letter expires, it'll expire after 1 year of writing it. So if they wrote it for you over a year ago, they will need to write and submit a new one. So let's recap. So again, number one, you're going to request 2 people who can write you a letter of recommendation, one from an academic perspective and the other from a non-academic perspective. Number 2, consider your timeline and ask as early as possible. We are going to try to aim for September 25th to have all your requests made. Number 3, make sure your request includes your intent, your purpose, where you're applying, and instructions on how they will submit the letter of recommendation. Number 4, make sure you follow up as the deadline approaches. So the last thing you want is to find out a couple days before your application is due that your letter hasn't been written. So let's avoid that. Let's do those kind reminders or asks well in advance of the November 1st deadline. And finally, remember to send a thank you as soon as your application process is complete and submitted. Now you're prepared to write your letters of now you're prepared to request your letters of recommendation to your writers in the correct way and most importantly in a timely fashion.